Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
Steve Baxley.
Indeed. So, this is a fucking throwback. I haven't done a mini episode of Geeky Gentlemen in quite a while. I haven't done a character discussion on Geeky Gentlemen in quite a while because I got bored with them even though they were relatively successful.
Characters, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, no. Instead, let's talk about this. Let's just do an hour-long discussion on the Death Star.
Let's do it.
I fucking liked that episode. No one cared. No one gave a shit. That was like one of my favorite discussion episodes we've done in a long time.
That one was a lot of fun, though. I thought we went around in a fun circle for that one.
Yeah, but no one gave a shit. That has like no views, and you all should feel bad.
Well, that's because everyone sucks.
Yeah. No, they do. So yeah, we're here today to talk about Count Dooku, and kind of what brought this on is I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately, and kind of when I can't find the one I'm wanting, or I have to like wait for the one I want to become available, I'll just like grab a Star Wars book, and so I've been getting a little into EU stuff lately, and I've just kind of come to the realization, like through all these EU Star Wars books I've been reading, a number of which have featured Count Dooku, and watching the films and thinking back on my experience watching the Clone Wars, and I just kind of came to the realization that like Count Dooku has like no character consistency between anything. I've never experienced something with Count Dooku where I'm like, yes, this is the same as this other thing. And it's kind of blown my fucking mind. And like
I am.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was excited when you messaged about reading Count Dooku stuff because Count Dooku's my favorite character in the prequel era, like bar none. I love Count Dooku. I will preface, though, by saying I love Count Dooku in the Legends canon, in the old EU. I have no fucking idea what they've done in the modern stuff, because most of the modern stuff I don't like. But reading the old novels and the old comics and stuff that detailed Dooku's origin before we reset the continuity, I think he's fascinating. I think in a lot of ways, what makes Dooku interesting is that he's, in the expanded canon, the more interesting version of what Anakin is in the prequels, because you and I share this opinion, the correct opinion, which is the prequels are terrible. They're really bad movies. They're not particularly well made. They're not particularly engaging, and a lot of the interesting bits come from things outside of those movies that retroactively make them more interesting, but nothing in and of themselves. And when you watch Christopher Lee as Count Dooku in episode 2 and 3, he's doing fucking nothing. He nothing in those movies explains whatsoever who the hell this dude is, where he came from, why he's a Count and Darth Tyrannus at the same time, that he used to be a Jedi. Like there's nothing about his character in those movies, with the exception of maybe I think he has a line about Yoda being his master or something. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you watched episode 2 and 3, and your only perception of Count Dooku was the guy who kidnapped Obi-Wan Kenobi and fought Yoda, and then the guy that Anakin decapitated, I would not blame you for not giving a fuck about this dude. The only thing that's saving him in those movies is Christopher Lee plays him, and he doesn't even play him particularly well. Like, clearly he doesn't have any material to work with. But when you're a kid and you're watching this dude with this beautiful brown cape played by Christopher Lee that you know from James Bond movies, and he's got the curved hilt lightsaber, something like primal tricks in your brain, and you're like, this is the coolest dude ever. And so then that was me, and then
No, it doesn't. That was just you. Don't fucking put that evil on me. Because I was a kid watching... all right. I want you to understand how isolated you are with this opinion, okay?
Okay.
So when Attack of the Clones came out, it was the long ago in 2002 when Attack of the Clones hit theaters. I remember I got to go see the movie before my friend Drew, who was the much bigger Star Wars fan. And so we're like looking up stuff online, and he's like getting so excited about watching it. He's like asking me questions. And then he hears the name Darth Tyrannus. He's like, fuck yeah. Ian, which one of these guys is Darth Tyrannus? And I point to the picture of Christopher Lee among like all the characters on the poster. And he's like, him? That guy? He looks like a fruit.
I mean, you're right. Oh man. I was very isolated in this opinion, thinking Count Dooku was cool as fuck. But so then I went and read the novels and comics and stuff as they were coming out over the years. And Dooku's really, really interesting because he's part of what's called the Lost 20, where there's only 20 Jedi. This might have changed, I don't know. But in the old canon, there was only 20 Jedi who were Jedi Masters that voluntarily resigned from the Jedi Order. And Dooku is one of them, where Dooku, over time, after Qui-Gon gets killed, or even a little bit before that, gets like increasingly disillusioned with the Jedi Order. And he has the same sort of frustrations that retroactively the prequels start to become about, which is the fact that the Jedi are just like not good people, and that they are not protectors of justice in the galaxy, that they're politicians and bureaucrats, and they're corrupt, and they're ignoring all the telltale signs of the dark side coming and stuff. And Dooku's like all hyper aware of that stuff, and he keeps trying to tell the Senate and to tell the Jedi what's going on, but like disaster after disaster strikes, and no one will listen to him. So he's just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not a Jedi anymore. I'm going to go home. I'm going to become a Count, and I'm just going to chill. And that's what he does. And so it's in that moment after Qui-Gon Jinn's been killed and Dooku decides to resign, that Palpatine starts like whispering in his ears. And he's like, okay, you know what? If no one's going to understand that there is a coming darkness, what if I put on my accelerationist cap and I start causing the accelerated darkness so people will start taking it seriously, and then we will do something about it. And of course that process leads him to get more and more corrupted by the dark side. But it is kind of interesting because Qui-Gon Jinn, as he's trained by Dooku, and Dooku himself, are really well read in the history of the Force, and they're really well read in Jedi prophecies and stuff. And Dooku in particular has like a lot of interest in the old traditions. That also goes back to why he's got a curved hilt lightsaber, which we can talk about later because it's the coolest thing ever. But like he's an old school. Yes, 100%. He's like an old school Jedi in a modern world of Jedi who are more like military generals. And he doesn't like that direction. And so like when he willingly retires and then becomes a Sith, he's still bringing that like old school sensibility of like what the Force should be about and what the Jedi Order should be about, but also what the Sith Order should be about. So like he's kind of idealistic even though he's a bad guy. And if you only watch the movies, you would get no sense of that whatsoever. You wouldn't even know that Qui-Gon was his apprentice.
I mean, they do mention that in the movie. That is specifically brought up, in all fairness.
That Qui-Gon is Count Dooku?
Yeah.
When?
I'm pretty sure it's when, like, that scene where Obi-Wan's, like, spinning around in that little hover thing.
Oh, is that when that happens? Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm
remember
pretty
that.
sure
Okay,
that's
fair enough.
like, I'm almost certain that is the exact scene where he talks about it, but I could be
I know that's
mistaken.
the scene where he like reveals the existence of the clone army. I know he says to Yoda, like he calls him my old master, but I didn't remember him saying Qui-Gon. But okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, because who the fuck wants to rewatch Attack of the Clones? Not me.
The worst Star Wars movie ever. Well, I don't know. Rise of Skywalker's
Rise
up
of Skywalker. Like,
there. Rise of Skywalker, Attack of the Clones, neck and neck for some of the worst movies ever made.
yeah. But anyway, so it's interesting to hear all that history, and, like, because I've gotten, like, a smattering of these things. So, I've read Darth Plagueis, which has kind of what you're talking about, where Dooku's, like, getting more and more disillusioned, and Sidious is, like, seeing that as his chance to bring him over to him. Fucking hate Darth Plagueis, worst fucking character ever. Actively makes everything he's around worse.
Deus Ex Machina of the Sith.
Yeah, pretty much. So, fucking Darth Plagueis, he's got that. So that's an old EU thing. The thing I read that I really fucking liked with Dooku in it, and it was like really, really solid, was Yoda Dark Rendezvous, which is a Legacy book 2, Legends book 2. That's fucking fantastic if you've never read that one, where it's such a fucking good ass scene where Dooku sends like a coded message to Yoda basically saying, I've fucked up, I want to come back. And he like, they like send these like back channel communications to each other until it all like culminates in a hologram that Dooku sends asking Yoda to come to him to talk, that like, Yoda, you don't understand the danger you're in, and I can't come to you, so you're gonna have to come to me, but I can't fully trust you, so if I get even a whiff of an army or an attack coming my way, I will be gone before you get here. And Yoda's like sitting there and he reads this message, and then he goes to meditate on the Force, and he actually communes with Qui-Gon's spirit in this moment, and they talk about the message together, and Qui-Gon says he thinks he's lying. And so Yoda goes on this fucking mission to meet with Dooku, and then it all comes together, which is always the best thing you can ever do with any like great media franchise, which is to just get two characters in a room talking to each other.
It's true.
It's so fucking good. And so Yoda's sitting here trying to bring back and save his pupil who's fallen to the dark side, which is like other Jedi in the book talk about, if you fell to the dark side, the first thing I would do is kill you, and that's because that is the kindest thing I could do to you. And so Yoda's like specifically not doing what he's been trying to do. He's actually trying to bring Dooku back, where Dooku thinks he's trapped Yoda, and that this is all like a big manipulation on his part, that like he's outwitted him. And it just, Yoda fucking like turns the tables on him so good, where he goes, like, the first thing he says to him once he gets in the room with him, he's like, tell me of this dark side. And so Dooku tries to like turn Yoda, and Yoda just like throws him on his fucking face with nothing but words, just like explaining how stupid the dark side is. And it's like fucking the best thing I've ever experienced with Count Dooku. So it kind of made me like...
Dark Rendezvous is super, super good. That came out like right before episode 3 also. So like if you were like me and you like checked that out in the library and you were reading it, and then you go in and you watch episode 3 and all Dooku does is get decapitated. It's so disappointing, man. He's got one scene and he gets his head cut off.
But, like, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is like, you get this really well fleshed out character in Dark Rendezvous, and then, of course, you get the movie in which, yeah, does fucking nothing, get his head cut off. I also did the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, and you want to know what, like, instead of this, like, flawed character who's, like, fallen and like, doesn't realize how, like, lost he is, instead of that, you get... I can't wait till I'm the head of this human-only empire. You just get fucking, like, racist old man in that book. And then but off the high of Dark Rendezvous, I was like, all right, well, here's another thing: Star Wars Dooku Jedi Lost, and this is not a Legends. This is a new canon. This is 2021 novelization, full cast audio book, which was kind of cool. And that was like the new origin for him, where he is throughout the entirety of his of his life growing up, growing up with the Jedi, he keeps in contact with his sister after a chance encounter meeting her back on his home planet. And they like basically send, like letters back and forth via hologram. And it's just kind of like chronicling his whole life with the Jedi and how he becomes like introduced to the dark side kind of by happenstance, and it starts to like affect him, and you see it's like slowly affecting his judgment, but he's also doing kind of the right thing because he's going forth and actually caring about people again, kind of like you were talking about, where it's more of like a better version of what they were trying to do with Anakin in the movies. But it gets real fucking messy, and like he ends up like coming in to save his planet because his brothers fucking like run it into the ground politically. So he kills his brother and takes over the planet because he's the rightful heir to the rulership of the planet. And then like tells the Jedi that he's retired, that he's leaving the Jedi Order and he's gonna become the Count. And I'm just like, just after all of these different things, and the one we haven't talked about, which is like I think my personal favorite, probably outside of Dark Rendezvous, which was his take in the Clone Wars, where he is actually a fucking menace and a threat, and he's like actually scary and has a cool design.
Yeah.
Like that fucking take is, I'm just sitting here and I'm left with like, why is this character like all over the fucking place though? It's just fucking everything I've read, anytime Sidious shows up, right, it's just yes, kill him, yes, fucking turn to the dark side. Like everyone knows how to fucking write Sidious, but you're like, oh well, Sidious has a lot more screen time between the original film for Return of the Jedi, and then you've got like all the stuff that they do with him in the prequels. So you got a lot of material to pull from for Sidious where you don't have it for Dooku. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Fair. But then at the same time, Darth Maul is one of the most like well fleshed out characters in the other stuff that I've read, and it's just consistently a fucking mad dog errand boy. Like they've got a consistent voice for him. I'm not saying it's a good voice, but like they fucking got it. And then when he's off on his own, he's actually surprisingly competent, and he's, despite Sidious's best efforts, he's actually learned to be a really good Sith. Like that's what happened with Darth Maul. Darth Maul had a consistent character that kind of naturally developed, whereas Dooku's just fucking, no one has a take on this dude. No, it's not that no one has a take on this dude. Everyone besides George Lucas has a take on this dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. Everyone except George Lucas.
But none of them are the same take.
So I have not read any of the new stuff. Dark Rendezvous I know because it's part of the series of novels that came out in between episode 2 and 3. So like that's where you got the Mace Windu Shadow Point novel. It's where you got the Dooku thing in Dark Rendezvous. But then there's also like what's it called? Legacy of the Jedi is another one in that series that kind of goes through the history of Yoda and Dooku and Qui-Gon and all that. So like that's the kind of stuff I'm more familiar with. There is a newer like series of animated shorts set during the Clone War era that's on Disney Plus that apparently goes into his origin. I don't know if those are good or what the canon is.
I heard a lot of people really like praise those as like really, really good. So I don't know, they might be.
I might have to watch the Dooku ones just because I like Dooku.
From what I hear, it's only like 5 episodes, and he's like 3 of them, Steve. So might as well just watch the whole fucking thing at that point.
I mean, you're probably right. Yeah, I can probably do that at some point. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, no, you're right about like Dooku having like kind of being all over the place. Part of that too is when you go back and look at a lot of those early 2000s novels, a lot of them are written by different people, and a lot of them are written by people who never worked on Star Wars again. Like the guy who does Dark Rendezvous, I don't think has written anything else in Star Wars canon that I'm aware of.
You know what I was surprised by? Because I really, really like Dark Rendezvous, and I was like, well, let me see if I can follow the author and see if he's done anything else. And I've actually listened to one of his books before, and it was the God of War novelization.
Oh, dude, I guess he's just a career novelization guy. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Dooku stuff in the old EU, in the Legacy or the Legends timeline, whatever they call it now, part of what's really interesting about him too is his kind of like old world sensibility. And if you know a lot of the old EU canon about like where the Sith rule of two came from, what the Sith Order used to be like before Darth Bane wiped them out, where what the Jedi Order was in contrast to that, and like the series of the Great Wars and stuff that were going on. If you're familiar with that stuff, when you read Dooku learning and understanding and dissecting into that, it's really interesting to see him wanting to like go back to an older style of ruling the galaxy. The thing about his lightsaber form that I really, really love is there's like 7 styles of lightsaber combat. And the current form of combat, the one that everyone uses, the one Obi-Wan uses, is one that's designed to deflect blaster bolts. Because ever since droid armies became a thing in the universe, Jedi weren't doing Jedi versus Sith combat anymore. After Darth Bane genocided all of the Sith, and there's only ever 2, the Jedi weren't really in lightsaber battles. They were in like gun battles and droid battles and stuff. And so the lightsaber forms had to be invented where Jedi were good at deflecting blaster bolts. And Dooku found that to be really inelegant, but also it's a skill that you're going to lose. So when a Sith does actually show up, you can't fight them toe-to-toe because you're not used to fighting with a lightsaber against a lightsaber. And so he uses his own... what form is he? Is he form 2? I don't remember the number. But his lightsaber form is like an old school like fencing style of lightsaber. And so he's really, really good at levitation and using his lightsaber in lightsaber to lightsaber combat. And the reason he's got a curved hilt lightsaber is because he can use the curved hilt to move easily up and down his palm so that the opponent's perception of the blade length always changes. So you can go in super close and super far, and you can keep them at a distance or come in real close, and they have no idea how far your reach actually is. And again, that's like a classic fencing sort of tool. And the reason fencing sabers are kind of standardized is to avoid people doing that. And so Count Dooku kind of fights dirty in that way, and it's really interesting to watch.
Now,
I love that.
Do you know the history behind why that was adapted into the character? Because that's not just a part of the character. It's because Christopher Lee was an Olympic fencer.
Oh, that's cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, so they actually... It was one of those Lucas things where they actually wrote it into the character based on who played him. So when when they were like getting Christopher Lee and doing all the stuff to get him, cast and costumed and stuff, they found out about his history as an Olympic fencer, and doing research on fencing is why that was integrated into the character.
That's pretty hype. I really like that. And that also is part of what a lot of those other novels... It's like Sam Jackson had a lot of opinions about Mace Windu that made their way into the Shatterpoint novel. So that's
the one I want to read, but I can't fucking find it anywhere.
It's a really popular one. Shatterpoint it's interesting. I know a lot of people complain about it making Mace Windu overpowered. But I don't know. I think it's cool as fuck. But yeah, Count Dooku's lightsaber form and use of the Force I always thought was really interesting because it heavily contrasted him against other Jedi. And when you watch him in Clone Wars, and you remember that episode where the Night Sisters send their assassins after Dooku, and he gets blinded, and he's just kicking their ass? Oh god, I fucking love that episode.
He's so fucking good in that. The other one that's like really fucking cool is the unseen rematch between Anakin and Dooku in Clone Wars. Obviously we see it in the show, but like within the context of the universe. It's like, I've grown twice as powerful since my powers have doubled since the last time we met. So fucking like last week. No, but like you get just an Anakin versus Dooku in front of Sidious. Ah, it's so fucking cool. And in that one, he does kind of get his ass kicked. He only saves himself because of Force lightning in that one. But like, it's so
which
sick.
is kind of a shame because that's the point where you realize, like, when you're working with Star Wars, where there are like sort of like defined canonical points that you can't cross. You have to get like really creative writing wise to figure out how you're gonna handle those limitations. Like, for example, Anakin can never meet General Grievous during the Clone Wars because he meets him for the first time in Episode 3. So you spend this entire series making sure that Anakin never meets Grievous. Dooku's a little bit like that too, where like the closer you get to Episode 3, the more unhinged Dooku has to get, and the less competent Dooku has to get, so Anakin can chop off his head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit of a shame.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just so fucking funny that, like, my powers have doubled since we met. Well, thanks to expanded canon, that's like last week. Your powers have doubled since last week.
If you remember the Genndy Karakovsky Clone Wars miniseries that came out before the Clone Wars CGI show?
Okay, but every time we talk about this, I tell you the same thing, and that's, yes, Steve, I remember it, and I think it's boring.
Alright, well, you're wrong. It's really good, but regardless of that, I really liked how every episode when it was airing were just like these like 5-minute Star Wars shorts that just gave you like a random character and a thing that they were doing. And the Dooku one is really cool because it's the one that introduces Asajj Ventress. So you can see like Dooku land on this planet, like this planet where there were like these gladiator fights, and he's just sitting in like the top ivory tower. And then Asajj Ventress shows up and like beats all of the assassins in the stadium, and then Dooku's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I am Sith." And then it ends on a dramatic cliffhanger. But then when you come back the next episode, Dooku just opens like laughing at her, saying, "Ha, you're not a Sith," and then just force lightnings her. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Ventress and Dooku's relationship is interesting. Because Ventress is kind of his version of Darth Maul, where she's just kind of his attack dog. And Clone Wars does a lot with that stuff. But what I think is more interesting as far as like Dooku having apprentices is Dooku and Qui-Gon's relationship I really like, because those two are actually on the same wavelength about a lot of stuff. And you can tell, particularly in the way Qui-Gon Jinn decides to take Anakin in, even though he's already got an apprentice in Obi-Wan. The reason he's like that is because he takes the Jedi prophecies seriously because of Dooku. Because Dooku knows about stuff like the Chosen One, and because he understands the history of the Jedi, and he knows the Sith are coming back. So he's hyper-aware, and he's instilling that fear into Qui-Gon. And Qui-Gon is not always like in step with the Jedi Council, which you don't see a lot of in the movies because he dies after the first one. But in the old EU, when he's Qui-Gon's apprentice, he's kind of rebellious. And he is kind of like Dooku's disciple in a way where he keeps trying to push the Jedi in the direction Dooku wanted them to be, even after Dooku left. And when you have all that additional context, and then you see him land on Tatooine and find Anakin, it almost justifies the fact that Qui-Gon's kind of a dick who just wants to buy this slave boy away from his mom because he's the Chosen One, because that's what Dooku would want him to do, and Dooku's the one who trained him.
I mean, I'm gonna say it's not a dick move to buy a child out of slavery. Hot take from me, I know, but...
Well, not a dick move to buy a child out of slavery, possibly a dick move to take the child that you want and then just let the entire planet continue to have slaves, because they're not useful to you.
I mean, yes, also that's a little out of his control. As Padme says in that movie, but slavery is outlawed, the Hutts don't care. Is kind of the dynamic there. I'm gonna go with that's a little above Qui-Gon's pay grade. He tried to rescue Shmi. It didn't work.
But it's also something that speaks to that larger issue of the sort of growing complacency of the Jedi Order and what's corrupting them, which is the thing Dooku's annoyed about.
Mm-hmm.
So like when Qui-Gon voluntarily works within that system, that's also like a sticking point for Dooku and why he decided to leave.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. I just thought your wording was strange. Let's go with
No, that's fair, that's fair. Also, interestingly, Qui-Gon doesn't leave... Or sorry, not Qui-Gon. Dooku doesn't leave the Jedi Order, I don't think, until Qui-Gon's already dead. So Qui-Gon would have been on the Council during Episode 1.
No, because they specifically talk about how Qui-Gon... you say Qui-Gon would have been on the Council, or Dooku would have been on
Dooku.
Okay, I think you said Qui-Gon, but you meant Dooku.
I might have, yeah. No, Dooku leaves the Jedi Order after Qui-Gon dies. So he would presumably have been on the Council during Episode 1.
But just decided, nah, I don't care about Anakin. I'm gonna skip today. You gonna like phone in? Nah, it's just my apprentice.
Fuck this kid. He needs to grow up.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Again, Darth Plagueis is such a fucking shit book. So I was reading another one of the novels. It was Darth Maul Lockdown, and it was kind of dumb. It was like Sidious sends Darth Maul to prison to like negotiate an arms deal, and Darth Maul has to like fight prisoners in like a gladiatorial style combat while he's there, but he can't use the dark side. And I don't really get. Yeah, I don't really get why they did that. It was kind of like dumb action set piece, and the plot's like really convoluted. But like, you just like sit here and like, this isn't really hitting for me. And then fucking like Darth Plagueis shows up, and I'm like, okay, I'm so checking out of this book. And the book never really recovered after that point for me. It's amazing how Star Wars fans have created a character that just instantly turns me off of extended Star Wars lore. Darth Plagueis shows up, must suck.
How did you at least share my opinion about this? Where when you hear the name Darth Tyrannus, you think it's the coolest Sith name ever.
Oh, it is. He does not.
Easily best Sith name.
He does not fucking live up to it, like on appearance wise, though. Like Darth Tyrannus really should have been like the dude that just comes in with like fucking Sith tattoos and like you remember when the bad ending for Starkiller in Force Unleashed when he has like the spiky things on his fucking fingers? Like that's your fucking Darth Tyrannus vibes. Like Darth Maul and Starkiller had a baby.
You could even say like someone like Savage Opress could be named Darth Tyrannus, but Savage Opress is also such a good name you don't want to trade it. He's savage and he oppresses you. What more do you need to know?
It does what it says on the tin, man.
It's very similar to Sinestro. He's sinister. What you got?
Meanwhile, Kilowog sitting over there like, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't make jokes like that. I'm a nice dude.
Yeah, no, Darth Tyrannus is like the coolest fucking name ever, and I wish it was said more in the movies.
They really,
but everyone just refers to him as Count Dooku. They say Tyrannus like once or twice, but like it's not his default name.
Yeah, no, they really fucking undercook it. It's too good a name to undercook like that.
In Clone Wars, though, if I remember right, there's a whole episode or a plot line about discovering that Darth Tyrannus is Dooku. Like they didn't know that initially.
They didn't? Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I might not be remembering that right, but I feel like there's a whole thing about like there being someone named Darth Tyrannus that they don't know is Dooku, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I don't remember that as a plot element, but it's been a long time since I've watched through all of Clone Wars, so it could be right. I don't know. The only time I remember Darth Tyrannus actually getting a name drop in anything was the fucking Star Wars Bounty Hunter video game for PS2. When he's like, I am Darth Tyrannus, when he fucking like messages Jango Fett and shit. So yeah, that's the only thing I recall.
I mean, Star Wars Bounty Hunter is a good game. I don't like the prequel era, but there's like so much fun canon stuff in that era that's fun to talk about, like the
I
Battle
mean,
of
I
the
really
Brigade.
like the prequel era. I just don't like the prequel movies.
That's fair. That might be a better way to put it. The prequel era material is really good outside of the actual live action movies.
Yeah.
Part of what's fun about Dooku too, because I mentioned earlier he's kind of like Anakin done right. Part of what's fun about Dooku is like in the original trilogy, Darth Vader has kind of a regality to him, you know?
Mhm.
Like he sounds big and foreboding. He loses his temper, but he's got a lot of gravitas to him. And then when you see that dude who's this big, regal, dark force kneel in front of the Emperor, it really sets a tone of like, oh, if this guy, a guy this high up, is bowing to Palpatine, Palpatine must be even crazier. And part of the problem I've always had with prequel Anakin is I always just kind of felt like hotshot fun Anakin never really met the vibe of what I thought Darth Vader was.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of can't separate it now because it's just so known. But as a kid watching those movies, Anakin's presence never equated to Darth Vader to me. On the other hand, Dooku's kind of did. Because this idea that Dooku is son of a rich family who develops Force abilities, willingly gets taken into the Jedi Order, has this chip on his shoulder because he comes from wealth and he wants to prove himself on his own merits, rises through the Jedi Order at shonen protagonist pace, right? Like we're talking like Naruto style. He's a 13-year-old stronger than all the adults kind of bullshit, right? And from there becomes like this really wise, force-sensitive character who has opinions about the Jedi Order and what they're doing wrong, about these old traditions like old lightsaber combat and the dangers of the Sith and the dark side, that willingly leaves and is just the count of a barren planet. That kind of stuff feels like the origin of a Darth Vader to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this might be a fun topic to just kind of like put in the back pocket one day. But like, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. What you would have done with the prequels, only using what's in the original trilogy to go off.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting.
Because there's just like so many things where like George either forgot about it or just didn't care and kind of wanted to go off in his own direction. But like so much stuff. Like that.
There's a lot of little things about the prequels that bug me where like Luke lives on a desert planet, so he's got robes. But then inexplicably the Jedi Order in their prime also wear very similar looking desert robes.
Mm-hmm.
Seems odd.
Yeah.
Probably would have changed that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like one of them for me that's like, he's more machine now than man. It's like, no, Anakin loses an arm throughout the events of the prequels before Obi-Wan just like cuts him to fucking ribbons and leaves him to burn in lava, and then like he gets the full Vader suit. Wouldn't it have been cool if he just like throughout the movies he just keeps losing parts of his body and literally is becoming more machine as the series goes on?
I would have really dug that. I also would have liked if they took the whole the Jedi Order have been extinct for a long time thing seriously, instead of just like Order 66 happened 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and made it a little bit more like there was a Clone Wars, there were these galactic governments and shit, but the Jedi were already basically extinct by that point, and Obi-Wan and Anakin were two of the last ones by that point.
Yeah, like lots of stuff like that. Save those for a later one. I think that would be a fun thing to do. I know a guy like made a video series like that and fucking it got like billions of views, so we're probably pretty late to the game on this one, but I think that might be just a fun thing to do. So yeah.
Yeah, no, 100% down. I feel like there's a lot of potential, and I feel like with prequel era characters, you can kind of sense the people who wrote those books feeling like they were either dissatisfied or more interested in parts of the prequel era that George didn't care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that stuff is fleshed out and more interesting. Like, you hire a guy like Christopher Lee to play a Sith Lord, and you give him nothing? Like, come on, that's a crime.
I mean, he got to fight Yoda, which would be really cool if it's not that they had Yoda fight Sidious, you know? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
It's immediately undercut by the much cooler thing in the next movie.
Yeah, and like especially when you have the relationship between Yoda and Dooku being master and apprentice too, where Dooku mentions it, but it would have been so much fun to actually explore that dynamic more in detail. Like, what does it feel like on Yoda's side to lose an apprentice to the dark side? And also, because in the old EU stuff, Dooku, like, progressively being disillusioned with the Jedi Order is not immediately indicative to people that he's turning to the dark side either, because by that point in the prequel era, no one really took seriously the idea that there was a dark side even left, right? Like, by that point when he was training as a Jedi, or was even a Jedi Master, no one had seen a Sith in years. It's not until Qui-Gon dies that people realize that the Sith are back. And by that point, Dooku's getting ready to leave the fold. So when Dooku's like sounding the alarm bells and stuff, people like Yoda are not taking it seriously because they're not thinking of a malevolent presence pushing him to the dark side, you know? They're not taking that dynamic seriously. And so when Dooku leaves the Jedi Order, and that's when he turns, it is actually a reveal for someone like Yoda that, hey, your old apprentice, the one that you raised to be the greatest Jedi of all time, the one that left because he didn't like you anymore, he's a Sith now. Like, that would have stabbed that guy in the heart. And they never explored that anywhere.
Yeah. Also, the more you talk about it, the more I really fucking hate... Oh, yes, he left after Qui-Gon died. Fucking Sidious coming up, I'm so sorry to hear about your apprentice being killed. I may have had a part to do with that. It's so fucking stupid. Now let me tell you about this club that I'm starting. I just lost a member that, like, I just went through something similar myself, so I can really relate to you right now. Maybe we can grieve together. Your apprentice just died. My apprentice who killed him just died too. What? Huh? What? Say that last part again. My apprentice just died too. Okay.
Palpatine and Dooku's relationship I've never found particularly interesting. I think Clone Wars gives them a little bit more tension, which is fun to watch from time to time. But yeah, you're right. Like a little bit more of like that. Does Dooku have animosity towards Palpatine for killing Qui-Gon? How much of Dooku edging himself over to the dark side and kind of losing his mind is just Sidious's powers clouding his judgment versus Dooku really starting to believe in the Sidious order? That kind of stuff I feel like is also a bit of a missed opportunity. But I mean, you know, it's Star Wars. It's filled with missed opportunities.
I mean, I just think it's weird that, like, on some level, I like it because it's Sidious brings people to the dark side by, like, taking what they want and, you know, twisting it and stuff, which is, like, what the dark side does, right? So Sidious is the dark side in that way. But at the same time, you kind of only need to do that once with Vader, and that would work better. But the fact that, like, they've retroactively done it twice with Dooku just feels weaker. So it feels like there's not actually a Sith, you know, apprentice besides Maul, who is just an errand boy, is never actually a serious apprentice or a serious Sith until he's off on his own.
Yeah, it does cheapen a little bit because you not only have Maul and Asajj Ventress, who both kind of serve that errand boy title, but you also got Grievous, right? And like the prequel era ends up being kind of crowded by these dark side users or lightsaber users who are not super Force using Sith Lords, you know? Like, Maul is great and fun and interesting, and he's in for the Sith side of it, but Palpatine doesn't take him seriously. Dooku doesn't take him seriously. Dooku and Sidious are the really only two Sith masters in that era. And Sidious being like the embodiment of the dark side, this sort of like ultimate corruptor, and taking seriously things like the Rule of Two, just kind of filling his posse with like weird errand boy bulldog dark side users does kind of cheapen it a little bit. Like, I really could have done without. If you were gonna have Darth Maul, okay, but you could have done without Ventress or Grievous after that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit too much.
All right. I feel like we're pretty much wrapped on Dooku. We're kind of just talking about disappointments with the Star Wars prequels. Man, I wonder if anyone on the internet's ever done that before.
It's a good question.
All right. So, recommendations for Dooku, which is the thing we used to do on character discussions. What would you recommend for Dooku out there?
Dark Rendezvous is a really good one. I'm glad you brought that one.
Good. Legitimately great. Like, not even just the Dooku stuff. The Yoda stuff's fantastic. The stuff with the side characters of Scout on the Jedi count, like the Jedi trainee Scout, was so fucking good. I like literally almost cried during a scene with her. That made me so happy. It was so cute. She's like training and she does all this stuff to get through these tournament trials, and Yoda's like, and now you are a Padawan and let me introduce you to your master. And she just starts like crying, and the master's like, I thought she'd be happy. She is happy, but she's let a dam open in her heart, and now she is letting herself feel all the emotions that she was too afraid to. She's like, that's exactly right, Master Yoda. How did you know? Secrets. Tell you I shall. And he like gets all close and like gets up and, you know, gets real close to her ear to the point where she can feel the whiskers on his face touching her ear. And then he just shouts in her ear, Head of the Jedi Council I am. My job it is.
Oh, that's fun.
I fucking cried at that. That was so sweet and cute.
Dark Rendezvous, yeah, I mean, 100% definitely really good. It's in the same series as the other Clone Wars novels that came out between episodes 2 and 3. But another novel in that series that you may not have read that's really good is Legacy of the Jedi. Legacy of the Jedi is like an anthology or like a vignette where you follow 4 separate Jedi across time. So you start with Yoda, and then you go to Dooku, and then you go to Qui-Gon, and then you go to Obi-Wan. So you get to actually understand that dynasty of Force users. And the Dooku section of it is really good, but the Qui-Gon part of it is also really fucking So if you liked Dark Rendezvous, you'd probably enjoy Legacy of the Jedi. And then the only other thing I can think of that isn't just is there was an old Dark Horse series of one-shots by John Ostrander called Star Wars Jedi. And one of the issues, because they're all one-shots, they're all just named after the characters, there's Star Wars Jedi Count Dooku. And the Count Dooku one is about... What the fuck's his name?
Is it about
Quinlan
Count
Voss.
Dooku? Oh, okay.
Well, no, not that. It's about Quinlan Voss and uncovering the conspiracy to create a clone army. So basically that speech that Dooku gives to Obi-Wan in Episode 2, explaining his whole plan.
I still don't understand it all these years later.
It makes no fucking sense. But like, Episode 2 had this really convoluted, dumb mystery about Obi-Wan going to find the clone army, being captured by Dooku, and discovering that there is a conspiracy to create a clone army, and it's the dumbest thing in the world, because why would you start the Clone Wars if the bad guy made your army for you? Like, what the fuck? But...
I just really wanted to have a war, guy. Like, seriously, I promise. There's nothing nefarious about it. I just really wanted to have a war with you guys. Here, I even made an army for you. Oh, thank you so much.
It's the dumbest thing in the world. In the galaxy, you might say. But no, the Dooku one-shot is basically the backstory of that. So it's explaining the mystery that Obi-Wan is trying to solve. And it's explained through Quinlan Voss, who goes through and figures this mystery out, and then ends up fighting Count Dooku. And you understand you understand Dooku's part in it a little bit more. The reason to read that is Dooku as like a negotiator and a master manipulator really comes out.
Okay.
But those two are really good, and then Clone Wars has really good Dooku episodes.
Yeah, Dooku's pretty fucking sick in Clone Wars. If nothing else, just the design of him. Because, like, I get the idea of what they were trying to go for with Christopher Lee, and he's like a very distinguished actor, and of course he like fucking played Dracula and shit, right? So like he should be able to do it, but they just give him nothing to work with, nothing to perform off of, script wise. He doesn't even get like any cool speeches or anything like that. He basically just carries the movie on his own gravitas as an actor, and that's it. And you know, fucking if you don't know Christopher Lee growing up, it doesn't mean anything. So like that's just it's just not it. Whereas fucking Clone Wars is like, okay, let's make a Count Dooku design that just fucking slaps. The pointed beard in that is so fucking sick.
The Clone Wars design for him is really cool, and then like the fact that much of Clone Wars is Anakin and Obi-Wan going toe-to-toe with Dooku as a strategist is really worthwhile. Because if you watch the arcs in the actual order that they were supposed to come out, then you can like follow the progression of the war through like mini chess battles between Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Dooku. And Dooku and Anakin's rapport with each other is really cool, because in the old expanded universe, Dooku does not like Anakin. He is like really annoyed that the chosen one ended up being this arrogant brat kid. And so like he's devoted his life to the Jedi prophecies and understanding the Force and stuff. And Anakin is the embodiment of that, and he doesn't think Anakin is worthy of it.
I mean, tough shit, I guess. I don't know. Like, what do you do with that? Oh, all right. Well, I think that'll do it. Everyone, thanks so much. What character are we discussing next time? No, we're not. I'm not bringing this back as a regular segment, but it was fun to do for like a one-off. It was supposed to be a short episode, and here we are, like almost an hour later, just fucking yapping away like we do.
It's a wonder what can happen when you like things about Star Wars.
Yeah, I know. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Till next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Count.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.